And now I know that you mentioned in our previous conversation that now you are working not testing the ESTM, because we have already a lot of research that has been done showing how effective it is. But now you are really more focused on making it work in poor communities or less resourceful communities, and also to try to understand, because sometimes the method will not respond the way you expect it to respond. And now you are trying to find ways and adaptations that will make your work to provide learning opportunities and to accelerate learning rate for different children that learn maybe in more directive ways. So how is that going as research, specifically in the way? What's the main adaptations that you had to do for less resourceful communities compared to resourceful community as you had at La Trobe University in Australia?
Yeah, when I think about a successful implementation of ESDM or any other intervention, I need to think whether I have a good fit between the child, the family, also preferences and resources, and the context where the intervention is in place. So in the context of communities serving low-income families, for example, I need to think about what are the resources out there. Daycare programs that they exist in low-income communities, which is great. I'm going to use those resources. Now, what we need to do to adapt the SDM is to think about what is the overall philosophy of the place I'm working with. You know, different programs, different services have their vision, their mission statements. If they're engaged in early childhood education, they probably already have some specific goals in mind when the child is there. And that goal can be, can be purely for the child to have fun, and that's okay. It's a starting point for therapy. Or it can be to teach them certain things, such as preventing the child from having challenging behaviors that will make it difficult for the other children to be there. So we engage in this process of motivational interviewing. We try to understand you as a teacher or you as a family, regardless of the material resources that you have. What is your goal with this child? What is it that you're trying to achieve? And then we see how ESDM strategies and concepts can fit into those goals. So for example, with some of the programs we've worked here, we were able to align to their idea of relationship as being the core of their community. We are a community where people do things together. That's ESDM. That's something you can use. Well,
that's a nice fit.
Yeah. Now for other children and families, we also work with families who are more discipline oriented, where there's a different philosophy that is, first you play, but then you're learning things, and play and learning are not in the same space. And that's okay. We do respect that if you as a family have a different philosophy about how to educate children, my role is not to come to you and say, everything you think is wrong. I'm going to tell you what's the best way to educate your child, because that doesn't work. They're not going to do it. So what we do there is to think about what components of ESDM will be a good fit for this family. And we go through the different stages and we find an agreement. That doesn't mean that we want to dilute the SDM or to pick and choose certain things, but it means that we work with the settings, with the child, with the family to find what works for this context, for this family, and for this child, using the ESDM conceptual and toolkit and the actual practical strategies of ESDM until we find the right language, the right way of implementing that works for them.
Great. So that's very important, I think, for a research program, because sometimes working as researchers, we may have some ideas that are demonstrated in articles and publications, but sometimes we forget that the reality is different in different places, and the resources, the values, and we think so much about children motivation, and sometimes we forget about motivation from parents and teachers. So sometimes we think so much about, I need to have this kid looking and imitating and engaging, and we forget that sometimes for teachers, the main concern may be, I can't have this guy banging other children, or for parents is, I don't have time to change diapers, or I don't have money for diapers all the time. I need to take this guy out of diapers, or I need this guy to be more autonomous so I can work from home. So those are such a different realities that if we impose our regular intervention, our regular values or perceptions, we may get nowhere, right?
Absolutely. To give you an idea, in a daycare program we worked in, the teachers were just too busy to collect the data using standard ESDM protocol, where you define whether a child is responding to your instructional cues 20% of the time, 50% of the time, and so on. And they just asked us, is it okay if we create an estimate which we describe as most of the time, sometime, half of the time, and say, let's try it, because we can try. If that works, and if I see the child making progress, then absolutely, yes. Of course, the ultimate, it boils down to whether the child is still making progress, right? You change something, you see if it works for that particular child. And if the answer is yes, we see progress, your estimate, which is still a scientific way of acting, instead of saying 25%, you say sometimes, and instead of 50%, you say half of the time. And there's even research that compare trial by trial and estimate of data. If you still see the child progress and it's objective, then those adaptations can make a difference between a program saying, okay, I can do it, let's do it, and a program saying, I don't have the time to do it.
That's not feasible, right? Yeah. And as becoming a parent of a child with autism, that came to my mind many times when I was like doing problem behavior corrections or redirecting the child, and some things seem so easy when you give as a supervisor an instruction that you give as supervisor, but when you have to do that, that's a completely different thing, right? So I think that's simple, but it's at the same time a great idea to hear from people what they can do and how they can do that. I've seen some people, some teachers and parents taking just the first trial for every objective daily. And statistically, if you think like, okay, I have just the first trial, but I need to have that 3 consecutive days for 5 steps in order to say that was achieved. And having 3 spontaneous, without support, without prompt responses in 3 consecutive days, if a child did not learn that, it's almost impossible. So it's statistically, it's representative, right? So
absolutely.
Congratulations for working with less resourceful communities, for putting your energy on that. Thank you very much for your manual, for providing so many practical cues that we can use daily to improve children's with autism lives. I say to you, thank you as a parent. I say thank you also as a professional. because that was a great achievement, and I hope that you have long career with a lot of publication and keep contributing with children development. Thank you very much,
Thiago.
Giacomo.
I hope the next meeting we have is going to be in person.
Oh, that would be nice, especially after COVID. That will happen for sure. And we have our meeting here, our scientific meeting that I still hope to happen on March.
Look forward to that, and thank you for the amazing work you're doing for the autism community in Brazil.
Thank you guys for everything. Thank you, Giacomo. Have a nice day and see you soon.
You too. Bye.
Muito obrigado para todo mundo que participou dessa nossa conversa. O Giacomo é um cara incrível, é um cara que tem contribuído muito para a comunidade de autismo, e ele realmente tem um trabalho voltado para o desenvolvimento de recursos, de estratégias para comunidades com menos recursos. Isso desde o doutorado dele, onde ele realmente explorou a possibilidade de fazer o Denver acontecer dentro de um contexto de pré-escola, né, de creche, de escolinha, e agora mais ainda porque ele está num dos estados mais carentes nos Estados Unidos, e acredite, sobretudo para as minorias, as comunidades, muitas delas ainda são muito carentes, e oferecer para eles alternativas para que a terapia, a estimulação precoce, o desenvolvimento dessas crianças aconteça dentro da escolinha, dentro da creche, com os recursos disponíveis e disponibilizados pelo Estado, é muitas vezes a única oportunidade que essas crianças têm de ter um desenvolvimento melhor, de ter uma melhor qualidade de vida no futuro. Então, muito obrigado a todos vocês que participaram. Eu espero que vocês possam aproveitar um pouco desse conteúdo, que vocês possam buscar o manual para que vocês aprendam um pouco mais. Eu não ganho comissão, gente, é só porque ele é bom mesmo. Então, ele foi publicado pelo Giacomo, Geraldine Dawson e Sally Rogers e se chama Implementing the Group-Based Early Start Denver Model for Preschoolers with Autism. Ele está no link da descrição, né, a capa do livro. Ele, infelizmente, ainda não tem em português, mas quem sabe um dia, né? Muito obrigado pela participação de vocês. Não se esqueça de se inscrever no canal. Deixe aqui seu comentário, deixe aqui suas perguntas, porque nós vamos voltar a falar em breve com o Giacomo, e eu espero poder trazer algumas das perguntas que vocês colocaram aqui para que ele possa responder para a gente. Muito obrigado e até mais.